drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% since rate in April. Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang. The UNESCO World Heritage Committee has adopted the Busan Declaration, calling for stronger global cooperation to better protect the world's cultural and natural heritage from growing threats. South Korea says it's closely coordinating with the United States to safeguard national interests as officials push ahead with talks on tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers. Spain cemented its status as the Football World Cup's dominant force, edging Argentina 1-0 after extra time to capture the 2026 FIFA World Cup title. The 48th UNESCO World Heritage Committee began formal deliberations in Busan on Monday, with the delegates unanimously adopting the Busan Declaration to strengthen global cooperation in protecting world heritage. Our culture correspondent Jung Hae-rim has our top story tonight.
The UNESCO World Heritage Committee adopted the Busan Declaration on Monday, a South Korea-led initiative calling for stronger international cooperation to protect World Heritage sites. The declaration proposes adding collaboration as the sixth strategic objective of the World Heritage Convention.
In the face of today's global crisis, solidarity within the international community remains the only solution. I hope this committee will serve as a turning point in reinvigorating cooperation under the World Heritage Convention.
The Busan Declaration is the committee's first formal declaration setting out the strategic direction for World Heritage protection since this 44th session, which was held in China in 2021. It also emphasizes inclusive interpretation of heritage values and shared responsibility for World Heritage management while addressing challenges including armed conflict, climate change, development pressures, and rapid technological change.
Yet, acknowledging that troubling reality that we are faced here, World Heritage properties and other sites of cultural significance continue to suffer from consequences of armed conflict around the world, and also of climate change.
Korean culture is also being showcased beyond the conference hall through the K Heritage House from Monday to July 29th, where visitors can explore dozens of exhibitions, performances, and interactive experiences highlighting Korea's cultural and natural heritage. The first plenary sessions saw delegates adopting the committee's agenda and timetable before beginning discussions on reports from the World Heritage Center and its advisory bodies. The afternoon session focused on ways to strengthen heritage protection in Africa and small island developing states. The committee will spend the coming days reviewing the conservation status of existing World Heritage sites before turning to new inscriptions and modifications, including South Korea's proposal to expand the Gaeol, Korean tidal flats World Heritage Site. Jung Hae-rim, Arirang News, Busan.
Despite seeing record-high exports, South Korea faces mounting economic risks. Amid trade uncertainties with major partners and Middle East tensions, the government has discussed managing these risks and expanding the country's global market presence. Lee Ju-yeon has more.
The Korean government has designated the stable management of the external environment as a core task amid rising external uncertainties. According to the ministerial meeting on international economic affairs on Monday, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance and Economy Koo Yoon-chol said the government will leverage its cooperation networks built through bilateral summits to manage external risk. Minister Koo announced that the government is closely coordinating with the U.S. on trade management and that it is putting the national interest first. He explained that the officials are actively discussing responses to U.S. tariff measures and follow-up implementations to counter non-tariff barriers. Regarding the plan to invest $350 billion in the U.S., he said Korea is reviewing its commercial feasibility and implementation system. Following the enforcement of the Korea-U.S. Strategic Investment Special Act in June, the government has launched the Project Management Committee and the Steering Committee to build the institutional and infrastructural foundations for the investment. The government has also laid out frameworks for strategic economy cooperation. This includes a comprehensive official development assistance business model, the KAI package, aimed at enhancing the growth potential of developing countries. The core of the KAI package lies in upgrading traditional ODA projects into AI-driven initiatives, building AI solutions, data centers, and the necessary power infrastructure alongside it. During the meeting, Korea's finalizations of a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with Bangladesh was also discussed. The government aims to improve market access for Korean businesses in Bangladesh and secure a strategic hub to penetrate the wider Southwest Asian market. Lee Ju-yeon, Arirang News.
Korea's exchange market plunged on Monday, triggering sell-side sidecars on both the KOSPI and KOSDAQ amid Middle East risks and also tech peak concerns in the global market. Our Baek Joo-hee has the details.
On Monday, the KOSPI plunged to close at the 6,500 level. The main KOSPI opened lower and plunged more than 4%, closing at 6,516.27. The tech-heavy KOSDAQ also suffered heavy losses, falling 5.33%, ending the day at 749.64. On the main exchange, foreign and retail investors were net buyers, while institutional investors turned to net sellers to lock in profits. As futures and spot prices plummeted, the Korea Exchange stepped in to stabilize the market. At 10:52 a.m., a sell-side sidecar was triggered on the KOSDAQ as the futures index dropped by more than 6%, suspending program trading for 5 minutes. This marks the 10th sell-side sidecar triggered on the KOSDAQ this year. Shortly after, at 11:21 a.m., the KOSPI saw its 20th sell-side sidecar of the year as the KOSPI 200 futures fell more than 5%. Major stocks across both exchanges suffered heavy losses as investor fear spread rapidly. Top tech stocks Samsung Electronics and SK hynix sank more than 4% due to a sharp decline in global semiconductor shares and growing doubts over AI profitability. Experts note that single-stock leveraged ETFs tied to Samsung and SK hynix have further amplified market volatility.
Despite fears over DRAM prices and AI spending, tech fundamentals remain solid, with valuations near historical lows. However, market direction will depend on big tech earnings due later this month. Until Korea introduces new limits on single-stock leveraged products on August 5th, high volatility is likely to persist.
Geopolitical risks also remain high, with global oil prices surging on concerns over supply disruptions through the Strait of Hormuz. Brent crude futures topped the $90 mark for the first time since June 11th, rising more than 3% as of Sunday Eastern Time. Meanwhile, security analysts warn against excessive pessimism, noting that much of the risk is already priced in, pointing to a possible rebound. Baek Joo-hee, Arirang News.
With the major U.S. big tech companies like Alphabet and Tesla scheduled to announce their earnings as early as this week, investors are paying close attention to whether their massive capital expenditures will actually pay off and whether Korean memory stocks could benefit from them. Park Jun-an has more.
The global semiconductor stock sell-off has wiped out massive market value in recent weeks. When it comes to correction, the Korean market has been no exception. Major memory chip makers like Samsung Electronics and SK hynix have seen their shares fall by at least 30% from their recent highs just a few weeks ago. effectively pulling the KOSPI down from the 9,300 level to the mid-6,000s. The main driver is growing skepticism surrounding artificial intelligence investments. For months, U.S. tech giants such as Alphabet, Microsoft, Meta, and Amazon have been pouring hundreds of billions of dollars of capital expenditure, or CapEx, into AI infrastructure. Their combined CapEx is projected to reach unprecedented levels by 2027. However, investors are now demanding proof that these massive spending sprees are generating measurable financial returns. This ideology extends to memory stocks as well. While investors acknowledge that memory leaders are set to post unprecedented earnings, many are selling the stocks, questioning whether further price hikes and margin expansion can continue. Despite the recent plunge, memory chip fundamentals remain relatively solid. DRAM prices are continuing their upward trend, and demand for AI investments remains strong. Yet, global stock prices are facing adjustments amid moves of risk-averse profit-taking. Adding to this pressure are geopolitical tensions, particularly the resurgence of war in the Middle East. Depending on the guidance big tech firms provide, investors will see whether the current market correction deepens or whether Korea's chip giants can finally stage a meaningful rebound. If big tech companies reaffirm their massive spending and express confidence in returns on their investments, it would be a positive sign for chip stocks. If not, it could further weigh on investor sentiment. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
A political deadlock overshadowed July's extraordinary National Assembly session, with the main opposition launching a filibuster during today's plenary meeting. Our political correspondent An Sung-jin reports.
Political tensions are escalating as the ruling Democratic Party pushes to extend the mandate of a special counsel investigating former President Yoon Suk-yeol and former First Lady Kim Gon-hee on allegations of insurrection and abuse of power. During a plenary session on Monday, the DP proposed an amendment which would allow the special counsel's investigation to continue for an additional 30 days, extending the deadline from July 24th to August 23rd.
The special counsel has faced limits in both time and manpower. That's why we're proposing this amendment, to extend the investigation, expand its scope, and increase staffing so the probe can be carried out thoroughly.
However, the effort has been stalled by an opposition filibuster from the People Power Party. The main opposition, PPP, has announced the extension as politically motivated and aimed at suppressing the opposition.
Once again, they're asking for more time. If that's the case, they should clearly explain why. Instead, they're giving the same reasons. If it keeps being extended, can this still be called a special investigation?
The probe launch in February has received 2 extensions under the existing bill. The proposed bill would expand the number of seconded government officials supporting the investigation from 130 to 150, add obstruction of government audits to a list of prosecutable offenses, and authorize the appointment of dedicated prosecutors to handle cases brought by the special counsel in court. The standoff is expected to continue into Tuesday. However, the ruling party can seek to end the filibuster after 24 hours with the backing of 3/5 of lawmakers. Given the DP's majority, the bill is expected to be voted on Tuesday afternoon, where it is widely expected to pass. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
The breakdown of last month's ceasefire has triggered a fresh wave of attacks across the Middle East. Washington and Tehran are now trading increasingly far-reaching strikes, with reports of more U.S. casualties. Kim Jun-hong has more.
The United States has carried out a 9th consecutive night of strikes on Iran as the death of 3 American service members fuels a widening cycle of retaliation. President Donald Trump said the latest attack was intended to honor the 3 troops, adding that Iran has suffered a major military blow.
Iran has been very, very badly damaged. They've lost everything almost militarily. They've got very little left. They've got some missiles. They've got some drones. They've got some manufacturing ability, not much. We control the Strait They don't control anything. So we'll see what happens. But we hit them very hard again tonight. And we did that in honor of the probably three. It's probably three as opposed to two. Great patriots.
U.S. Central Command said the 3-hour operation began at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time on Sunday, targeting Iranian military facilities. 2 U.S. service members were killed Friday during an Iranian missile and drone attack on American forces in Jordan. A third died Saturday in northern Iraq while carrying out a controlled detonation of unexploded ordnance from a downed Iranian attack drone. The deaths bring confirmed U.S. military fatalities since the war began to 17. Unidentified remains have also been recovered from the site of Friday's attack in Jordan. If they are confirmed as belonging to a missing U.S. service member, the toll would rise to 18. Iran, meanwhile, expanded its attacks on Sunday. Air raid sirens sounded in Bahrain, while Kuwait says it intercepted another Iranian drone. The Revolutionary Guard also says it struck the U.S. base in Syria. Tehran has separately accused Washington of striking the construction site of the Darkovan nuclear power plant. Tensions are also growing in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran claims 2 tankers exploded while attempting to use what it called an unsafe route late Sunday, warning that oil, gas, and fertilizer shipments would remain at risk. Despite the clashes, Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson said Monday that Tehran had received proposals from mediators to ease tensions with Washington. Tehran gave no details but said diplomatic efforts had stepped up in recent days to prevent further escalation. Kim Jun-ho, Arirang News.
Right after showcasing its close ties with China, North Korea is now doing the same with Russia. Moscow seems to be highly responsive, with President Vladimir Putin personally greeting and thanking North Korea's foreign minister in Russia. Kim Do-yeon explains why.
Russian President Vladimir Putin showed his closeness to North Korea on Sunday local time, personally welcoming Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee during her official visit to Moscow just 9 months after her last trip.
I would like to once again express my gratitude for the support of our special military operation and for the decision to send soldiers of the Korean People's Army to participate in the liberation of the Kursk region.
The Democratic People's Republic of Korea will continue to unwaveringly support all of Russia's efforts aimed at upholding its sovereignty, security interests, and territorial integrity, and at eliminating the root causes of the crisis in Ukraine.
This engagement follows a series of recent events demonstrating Pyongyang's close ties with China. As North Korea moves to woo Russia as well, the diplomatic push leverages a critical opening created by the ongoing conflict.
Russia is currently in a highly unfavorable wartime situation where tighter military collaboration with North Korea has become an absolute necessity.
Recent data from the Center for Strategic and International Studies shows Russian casualties hitting 30,000 a month, outpacing recruitment. Compounded by shrinking frontline control and relentless drone strikes, Moscow faces crippling attrition, forcing it to rely on North Korea, which, according to reports, has supplied massive ammunition stocks and up to 15,000 troops.
From Russia's perspective, they need more weapons support due to the intensifying war. For North Korea, they are likely demanding faster transfers of advanced military technology and economic cooperation in return for their troop deployment.
With mutual strategic dependency rapidly accelerating, eyes are now on whether Kim Jong-un will make a trip to Russia himself by the end of the year. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Korean science fiction film Hope by director Na Hong-jin has surpassed the 2 million admission mark just 5 days after its release, making it the fastest film to reach the box office milestone this year. That's according to the Korean Film Council on Monday. Hope, starring Hwang Jung-min, Jo In-sung, and Jung Ho-yeon, opened in Korea on July 15th. The film is set in the fictional village of Hoppoport near the demilitarized zone, which sees the sudden arrival of mysterious extraterrestrial creatures. It premiered at the 79th Cannes Film Festival earlier this year. Now, the previous record for the fastest film to reach 2 million views this year was Yeon Sang-ho's The Colony. It's time now to take a look at what's been happening in the world of sports. For that, we have our sports editor, Paul Neate, joining us in the studio. Happy Monday, Paul.
Indeed, hello.
Paul, we have to start with the World Cup. Spain are World Cup champions after all.
Yes, indeed. A second World Cup win for Spain, of course. La Roja beat Argentina 1-0 on Sunday in the final to claim the country's second World Cup triumph. The first, of course, coming in 2010. At New York, New Jersey Stadium, a goal from Ferran Torres in extra time sealed the win. Argentina were reduced to 10 men when Enzo Fernandez was sent off in second half stoppage time. It was a final that saw Spain dominate possession and the number of chances, and tempers flared afterwards, with Argentina reacting badly to the loss. Many of their players were in tears, including Lionel Messi, with the match likely to be his very last at a World Cup. Meanwhile, actress Jung Ho-yeon and K-pop supergroup BTS also made appearances. Jung took part in the pre-match trophy presentation as a global ambassador for Louis Vuitton, appearing alongside Spanish tennis star Carlos Alcaraz. The pair opened the Louis Vuitton trophy case to unveil the World Cup trophy inside. At half-time, BTS were one of the performers in the first ever World Cup final half-time show, performing the hit song Dynamite and sharing the spotlight with global stars including Madonna, Justin Bieber and Shakira. On Saturday, England beat France 6-4 to win the bronze final. The Three Lions were 4-0 up at half-time before France fought back to 4-3, spurring an end-to-end second half. The win marked England's best finish at a World Cup since 1966. France forward Mbappe scored twice to win the Golden Boot, ending the World Cup with 10 goals.
There's that for the World Cup, but staying with football, finally, a goal for Heung-min. Tell us more.
Yes, finally off the mark, if goal-wise, in MLS this season. Son Heung-min on Saturday scored his first league goal of the season in LAFC's 3-0 Los Angeles derby win over LA Galaxy, a match known as El Tráfico, a name that cheekily nods to the notorious highway congestion in the Los Angeles metro area. Son got the third goal of the game just shy of the hour mark with a well-taken shot from just outside the box. LAFC sit third in the Western Conference with 8 wins from 16 matches. Son has spent most of the season providing assists and so far has a league-leading 8 number of assists so far.
Moving on to baseball now. As widely expected, the KBO has reached another attendance milestone, hasn't it?
Another, yes. KBO just seems to be getting more and more popular these days. The league announced on Sunday that over 8 million fans have come through the turnstiles so far this season. And after 443 games, it beats the record set just last year by 22 games. KBO has cleared every million mark in record-breaking pace so far this year, and teams are also averaging just over 18,000 fans per game, up from around 16,800 from the same point last season.
And finally, Paul, it proved to be a productive weekend for Korean rookies in MLB. Tell us more.
It did, yes, starting with Song Sung-min, who enjoyed his first 3-hit match. Song on Sunday went 3 for 3 with 2 RBIs and scored twice, despite only entering the game in the 8th inning as a pinch hitter. He helped his team, the San Diego Padres, hammer the Kansas City Royals 19-2 in Kansas. Meanwhile, Go-seok on Sunday pitched a scoreless inning for the Minnesota Twins in an away game with the Chicago Cubs. Go was used as a relief pitcher in the bottom of the 8th, striking out Michael Conforto and Kevin Alcantara, but the Twins lost the match 10-1. Go joined the Twins earlier this month from the Detroit Tigers and made his debut on July 9th. Elsewhere, Lee Jong-hoon went 1 for 4 in a 6-3 loss for the San Francisco Giants against the Seattle Mariners. His batting average of .303, though, is the 6th best in MLB.
Great stuff. Thanks, Paul. I'll see you next Monday.
Thank you. Yep.
A band of heavy rain is stretching across much of the central regions right now. Some parts of Gyeonggi-do province and Gyeongsang-buk-do province are seeing downpours of up to 30 millimeters an hour. After days of heavy rain, the ground is already saturated across much of the country. So please stay alert for possible landslides and any additional damage. Heavy monsoon rain will continue to target the central regions tomorrow. The capital area and northern Gangwon-do province could see up to 120 millimeters, while Chungcheong-do provinces could see more than 100 millimeters of rain. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 24 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon 23, Busan 26 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 29 degrees, Daejeon 31 and Daegu 34 degrees. The seasonal rain front will stick around this week, bringing rounds of monsoon rain to different parts of the country. So don't forget your umbrella and stay safe out there. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
That's all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
did it all begin? The beginning of joy embedded in daily life, where steps of learning meet a bigger world, and history coexists. The legend continues. Innovative technologies come together to unfold a new future, building a better tomorrow. A joy accessible to all, always present in your daily life. JDC.
Knock knock. The magical door to the world of K-animation is swinging wide open. Meet your instant new BFF, the adorable Catch. Tina Ping will have you hooked from the very first glance. Need a hand? Our Robocar Pony Rescue team is always zooming in to save the day. How about tagging along on Pinkfong and Pal's super exciting quest to reclaim their lost magic? With the mysterious life forms Cabion by your side, you can become a Cabion master and save humanity like the total hero. Protecting children's innocence while igniting their boundless imaginations. That's the magic of Korean animation. K-animation, the ultimate bestie for kids worldwide.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gen. U.S. President Donald Trump has delivered a nationally televised address amid continued fighting between the U.S. and Iran. While much of the speech focused on his renewed claims of Chinese interference in the 2020 election, he said relatively little about the ongoing war, prompting fresh political debate. Now, at the same time, the conflict continues to evolve, raising questions about its direction and the prospects for diplomacy. To discuss both the political and security implications, we're joined by two guests tonight. First, Christophe Godin, professor of political science at Heung-min University. A big welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
And also joining us is Soo-Hoon Baek, researcher of Institute of Middle East Studies. Good to see you.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So, let's start a discussion right away. First with Professor Godin. So, like I've said, during the latest address, President Trump once again claimed that China interfered in the 2020 U.S. election. Why do you think he's bringing back the election fraud claims right now, just a couple months before the November midterms?
Oh, because basically the context looks very grim to President Trump. First, the domestic context, with the midterm elections, so kicking in November. These elections in America, as you know, historically, have always been an occasion for American citizens to voice their discontent. So this discontent is higher than ever, not mostly because of the war in Iran, but because of inflation that is skyrocketing in America for many reasons, but partly because of the tariffs implemented by the Trump administration, and also, as you explained in your little introduction, because of the domestic, not only the domestic, but the international context, So that is this war in Iran that Trump started almost single-handedly. And as far as we can tell, there is no light at the end of the tunnel. So when in trouble, Trump does unfortunately, what he always does. He's trying to dodge the issue. He's trying to look for a scapegoat, in this case, China, and he's going back to his old narratives about the 2020 election that would have been allegedly stolen. All of this is about dodging the issue. Something interesting is that this national address was meant to be about the situation in Iran. And as you mentioned again in your introduction, Trump discussed almost everything but the situation in Iran, which I think is self-explanatory, eloquent enough in itself.
We'll go back to the Trump speech, the portion of Iran as we speak. But building on this, the Democrats first called the entire speech an attack on democracy, and some major American broadcasters didn't actually air it live. What impact could this speech have on political polarization and the midterm elections, Professor Gunnar?
What is interesting in the first place, as you mentioned again, is that major broadcasters, so politically neutral broadcasters, have decided not to air it live. So that's very interesting in itself, because it means that all these broadcasters have come to consider their own president as a threat to American democracy. What is happening now, I think, is unfortunately quite transparent. Trump is trying to build on polarization in order to disguise his own failures, either domestically or internationally. So, of course, as you mentioned in your question, there is a risk to increase polarization in America. That said, however, I wonder, to be honest, if anybody is still listening to Trump but his own supporters. I would incline to say that, unfortunately, damage is done already, and I'm afraid that now, in this situation, nothing Trump can say or do can actually make the situation any worse. America can hardly be more polarized than it is already, unfortunately.
So we'll see how voters took this come November. Now, if we turn to Iran, President Trump only briefly mentioned the war, saying the U.S. is winning and that the results will soon be very clear. Dr. Beck, what do you think why do you think he stopped short of mentioning more?
Because President Trump highlighted victory but avoided to defining it. Because the more clear he defines the war objectives, the more directly he becomes responsible for its cost, duration, and outcomes. I think the fact that President Trump devoted only one brief line of Iran was itself highly revealing. So he wanted this address to be remembered primarily as a domestic political speech about election integrity and political legitimacy, not as a wartime address in which he assumed full responsibility for an increasingly costly conflicts. So if he had focused extensively on Iran, President Trump would have been expected to answer several difficult questions, such as what exactly is the military objectives? Is it only to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, or is it also to control over the Strait of Hormuz, or weakening the Iranian regimes and secure freedom of navigation? How long will the operation continue? What constitutes the victories? And what is the exit strategies? I mean, those questions are difficult to answer because the goals of the campaign appears to have expanded over the time. So the war, as we go back to February 28th, the war began with an emphasis on Iranian nuclear and missile infrastructures, but it has increasingly become a conflict over the Strait of Hormuz, commercial shipping, Iran ports, and security of American bases throughout the region. So Washington's objectives have shifted over time, while the collapse of the ceasefire has exposed unresolved disagreement over the Strait and Iran's nuclear program. So by saying only that United States is winning and the American will soon see the result, President Trump can claim political credit without defining measurable benchmark. So if Iran eventually returns to negotiation, he can say the military campaign forced Tehran back to the negotiation table. If Iran continues to resist, he can argue that further attacks are needed to complete the victories. So, and also, it is also a form of strategic ambiguity. So Trump does not want to publicly commit himself to a specific timetable or particular end state because that he would restrict his freedom of action. So my assessment is that this was an effort to control the political ownership of the war. So President Trump wants to project a victory without allowing the increasingly complicated military situation to dominate his domestic political message. So that's why the reason he kind of like downplayed and he only mentioned just one line about like Iranian warfare and just boosting about we are still winning and we're going to get result that we want in the short, brief time.
So this very short message was rather strategic from President Trump's point. But if we look deeper into the situation, Dr. Beck, U.S. casualties actually continue to mount, including 2 American service members killed on the 17th, we believe. So given how the war has unfolded so far, how convincing is President Trump's claim that the U.S. is winning right now?
So, as you mentioned, I mean, it depends on what we mean by winning. So, at the tactical level, the United States is clearly demonstrating military superiority. It can conduct repeated strikes deep inside Iran, damage missile and drone infrastructures, target coastal surveillances and air defense system, and maintain substantial air and maritime power around the region. But tactical superiority is not the same as strategic victory. Strategically, the record is much more mixed. Iran retained the ability to strike American bases and regional partners with missiles and drones. As you mentioned, 2 U.S. service members were killed in Jordan on July 17th while defending against Iranian missile and drone attack. And another service member was initially reported missing. So by July 18th, the total numbers of U.S. military deaths during the war had reached 17, with more than 400 personnel reportedly wounded. So Iran and still are continuing to attack U.S. positions and American partner in Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar, and even after months of U.S. and Israel strike. So the United States has also not yet achieved several of the outcomes that would normally define strategic victory. First, the nuclear question remains unresolved. So Iran nuclear capabilities still are there. And second, the Strait of Hormuz has not been reliably reopened. It is closed, and we see no ship trespassing. And third, the conflict has expanded geographically rather than contracted. U.S. allies and facilities across the Gulf have come under attack, and civilian infrastructures, including power and water facilities, have increasingly been drawn into a conflict. And fourth, the June memorandum did not produce a durable political settlement. So a war is not won simply because one side can destroy more targets. Strategic victories means compelling the opponent to change its behavior at the politically and economically acceptable cost. So far, Iran has not been weakened, but it has not capitulated. It continues to retaliate, disrupts shipping, and reject on American-defined settlements. So therefore, President Trump can credibly claim that the United States is winning many of military engagement, but it is premature to say that the United States is winning by war strategically because it's still ongoing and we haven't seen the objectives that has been derived or which United States always claim started from the beginning.
Right, a very important point that we've made, Dr. Beck, that the definition of winning would be very crucial at this point. Now, if we circle back to Washington earlier this week, President Trump has formally notified the Congress that military operations against Iran has resumed. Does that suggest the administration is preparing for a much longer campaign? Professor Gov't.
Sorry. My bad. Long story short, yes. Also, what is concerning about this is that normally in the American constitutional order, in the first place, the Congress should be to authorize these military actions before they are taken by the president, so as the commander-in-chief of military forces. Here, in your question, what I find to be most concerning is that the Congress, so the Republican majority in Congress, seems to be running after President Trump. President Trump seems to be running this war almost by himself, single-handedly. And as Dr. Peck mentioned before me, basically a war ends with a strategic victory. And a strategic victory means that, long story short, you can compel your opponent to do as you say. But if you don't say what you're after, then therefore these negotiations cannot come to an end. So what is happening now is that the US Congress, what can the US Congress do? Two things. Either they vote against these operations to stop them, which is not to happen because the Republican majority in this Congress, to be clear, is basically made of President Trump's goons. We've seen what happened to all Republicans, like Liz Cheney, for instance, who tried to stand up against Trump. It never ended well. So what they can only do is to follow President Trump. And President Trump is giving them no direction to follow, which is how we ended in this then end. Long story short, unfortunately.
But Professor Godong, speaking of direction, which is quite unclear, I think many of us are confused right now. As far as we recall, the war began with a stated goal of targeting Iran's nuclear program. But now it seems as if the focus is, has shifted to the Strait of Hormuz. So with growing criticism at home, what does President Trump actually need to do to justify this situation?
I'm not sure he knows himself, to be frank. This war started with one single clear objective, which was overthrowing the Islamic Republic in Iran. This, as we can tell, failed, because in the bigger picture, ending the Iranian nuclear program and putting an end to the Islamic Republic, in the bigger picture, these are one and same, because this nuclear program is the creation of the Islamic Republic. So what happened, in fact, in the bigger picture, is that quite cleverly, the mullahs in Iran decided to shift the objective of the war. Instead of fighting back, because, of course, as Dr. Beck mentioned, Iran has the military capacity to hit American bases in the Emirates, in Qatar, in Kuwait, etc., but nothing further. So what Iran decided to do was basically to block the Strait of Hormuz in order to change the terms of the war. And so this, I think, the Trump administration had never considered to be possible. What happened, long story short, is that the Trump administration decided to launch this war in order to basically put an end to this regime in Iran. And this regime in Iran, as they are not able to strike back directly against America, decided very cleverly, strategically speaking, to shift the terms of the war by blocking the Strait of Hormuz. And this is how the Trump administration has ended in a trap that I think nobody had been considering in the first place. To put an end to this, America will need to dispatch troops in the Middle East, which would mean many American lives to be lost, and the US is not ready for that. Look, yesterday and the day before, like 3 American soldiers died, and look at the uproar that followed in America. The American public is not ready to have American lives lost in countries many American citizens are not able to locate on a map. As simple as that.
So the situation is worse than many have been expecting. So after this latest U.S. strikes, another concerning comment is Iran's Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei vowed a stronger response regarding the situation. Dr. Beck, how likely is it that it would escalate into a full-scale war?
So the possibility of a full-scale war is real and has increased considerably. but I would distinguish between a growing risk of a full-scale war and most likely immediate scenarios. So the statement attributed to Mustafa Khamenei reflects the broader position of Iran's hardline security establishment. Repeated diplomatic efforts have failed, American pressure has continued, and Iran therefore believes that restraint has produced no meaningful benefit. So the message is politically important because it authorized a more aggressive posture by the Revolutionary Guards and other Iranian military institutions. So the risk is particularly high because the conflict has entered that we might call the escalation ladder. So the first lung is the repeated exchange of limited strike, such as the United States attacks Iranian missile drone and coastal and logistical infrastructures, and Iran response against regional bases or maritime targets. The second lung is attack producing significant American casualty, which is now we are entering. So the death of U.S. service members creates strong domestic and institutional pressure on Washington to retaliate decisively. Iran may intend a limited response, but missile and drones are inherently difficult to calibrate. So on attack intended to be symbolic could kill dozens of American and trigger much larger U.S. operation. The third lung would involve attacks on strategically existential or targets. A U.S. attempt to seize Iranian territory such as Kharak Island, which is a major strike on deep underground nuclear, or a major strike on deep underground nuclear facilities, or Iran attacks on critical Gulf energy, electric cities, and desalination infrastructures. But thankfully, we are not yet on this third lung. So, and fortunately, both governments still have powerful reason to avoid total war. Iran knows that a full conventional war would expose its military, energy, and governmental infrastructure to overwhelming American firepower. The United States knows that the invasion or occupation would require extensive forces, produce substantial casualty, raises oil prices, and potentially generate another prolonged Middle Eastern war. So that is why the most likely scenario remains neither peace nor immediate all-out war. It is a protracted, high-intensity limited war with repeated airstrike, missile attacks, maritime incidents, and intermittent diplomatic contracts. But the buffer separating limited war from full-scale war is becoming dangerously thin. That's what I'm really concerned about. So I would say the probability of full-scale war is no longer remote. It may still be avoidable, but it could be triggered not by a deliberate decision to start a total war, but by a mass casualty incident or miscalculation or an attack that crosses an opponent's perceived red line. So that is most the dangerous situation that we are facing, and that is most concern that I have during this kind of exchange of the attack between United States and Iran.
Right. So if I understood it right, it seems like we're really walking on very thin ice right now. So given this current situation, Dr. Beck, do you think there's any, room or someone or something that could bring the both sides back to the table?
Yes, mediation is still possible, but it is unlikely to be conducted successfully by one country acting alone. So the fact that traditional mediator states that have themselves come under attack makes diplomacy far more difficult. Qatar has confirmed intercepting Iranian missiles, while Oman has also faced attacks on or near its territory during the broader conflict. So although responsibility for some incident involving Oman has been disrupted, these events damages the perception of a neutral diplomatic space and place domestic pressure on mediator government to take firmer position, not just to be naive and keep on bridging between Iran and United States. So the most plausible principal political mediator is currently Pakistan. Pakistan helped broker the June framework and maintain working channels with both Washington and Tehran. But Pakistan also has its limitation because, their close defense relation with Saudi Arabia. And as Iranian and Houthi attack place Saudi territory under greater pressure, Islamabad may find it increasingly difficult to present itself as a complete neutral. And Egypt and Turkey could provide supplementary political channel because both maintain relation with Tehran while also having access to Washington and Gulf government. But however, neither Turkey nor Egypt alone is likely to be fully trusted by every party. So therefore, the best model would be multi-layered contract group rather than one heroic mediator. So I do believe we need not only like just one heroic mediator, but Qatar, the Turkey and Egypt and Kuwait, all this like Pakistan, all people, the state needs to play their role to actually bring this two-party to a negotiation table. But if it's not, it is very difficult to get this like negotiation get started.
A very important point. So we'll really have to watch whether diplomacy through collective action still has a path forward. Thank you so much for your insights tonight, Dr. Baek.
Pleasure is mine.
And of course, Professor Godong, we really appreciate it.
Thanks. Pleasure's mine too.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame tonight. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.